Morning, Dr. Brad.
Hello, Curt.
Good to see you this fine Saturday morning.
It is a beautiful day.
So we're gonna do a short topic meeting this morning, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I was pondering this. It's interesting how it soaks in the influence of the science in understanding how the world is put together, and it is with some reflection. I see that the increasing operation of programs being run through the human beings.
Yes.
And it is like it's not quite disturbing, but I see how it could be a hit disturbing because it's just bot-like behavior,
Yes.
predictable.
It's I don't know. I kind of find it terrifying. Because we're all wrapped up in, well, they call these narratives, right?
Okay.
But the problem with using being wrapped up in your own narrative or your own portfolio of narratives, which is more accurate. Excuse me. I don't know. I'm tired. I should be tired. And that's that. The idea is that narratives are relative rather than divergent from the physical, behavioral, and evolutionary logical laws. In other words, we are wrapped up in narratives. What they're trying to say is everything's relative, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case. We're wrapped up in narratives. There's a reason for the civilizational narratives that survived because they were least divergent. They were only as divergent as possible from the laws of nature to survive, right? And then within those civilizations that survived, the rate of evolutionary progress, evolutionary adaptation, innovation, adaptation, and evolution of those different civilizations varies by their deviation from the laws of the universe. So likewise, within each civilization, we're sort of bound by the civilizational metaphysics, and then we're bound further by whatever narrative we choose within the civilization. So, so to some degree, excuse me, and so within European civilization, it's a little bit harder to diverge from reality than it is Islamic or African civilization. Right. And we can order the civilizations, because you and I do this, by how divergent they are and what costs they pay is accordingly. So,
Mhm.
but once you realize this, you're like, well, there's my civilizational bot program, which is my narrative, and then there's my ethnic and sub-ethnic, class, culture, sex, and generational narrative.
Mhm.
And I mean, and then you just start saying that this is like this. I don't know. I remember when somebody told me about tarot cards when I was a kid,
Yeah.
right? And you just lay out these tarot cards in this sort of pattern. And I keep thinking of it like that. Is that these we have these identities that are narratives, right? We have narratives that play out like this tarot card map or something, and it's like we're completely unaware that those are just programs.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the analog that I used is pachinko balls
Yes, yes,
because it's like it's really I'm encountering people so that are like the tough cases are okay, psychological disturbances, and it's like you run into a person that's a pachinko ball that got bounced around, and I'm like this telling this nice lady that is just distraught. She has overloaded by so many dimensions. It's god
mhm,
awful situation, but I'm like this. It's like I mean, I'm really tell her there's really nothing wrong with you. You're all right. You just got batted around pretty good, and you ended up in this hellhole of circumstance,
right,
which was accidental.
right,
just the cards you got handed were just awful.
Yep, you
And
got
and you're left here to sort it out. And to have remembered getting bounced down that pachinko staircase. And it's awful. And it's like, but you're all right. And you can straighten it out.
yes,
Right. It's just hard. But it comes down to randomness. And it kind of made me appreciate the you talk about we're trying to fill up the field of opportunity with of all the different varieties of potential there.
yep,
But it goes to Thomas Aquinas talks about it as accidents.
yes.
Just an accident, and it's like it's
Oh, it is.
So that's Thomas Aquinas saying the same thing as you're saying. It's like bots. It's just so it's like it's not. The issue is the human dignity appears to arise from the rising above it.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yes.
Because it's like hard. It's the work. The real work is overcoming the accidents.
I think for the hard part for a lot of people is if you're, let's take your, I don't know who this person is. Let's take a woman or a guy, right? And you're in a position where your pachinko ball has just ended up in the wrong,
Just beat up.
right? Well, I
Yeah.
have a sister that makes the wrong decision every time. So it's not like
She has a diode in backwards.
there's a diode in there, all right? So, but anyway, you can end up where you are just because you lack the knowledge. You were raised in a family didn't teach you the way the world works correctly. God knows somebody stepped on a butterfly in China and it ended up affecting
Right.
you have no idea, right? So now the problem is once you're far enough down the ladder, so to speak, you've fallen far enough down the pachinko game,
Yeah.
right? The problem is that the cost of daily life is such that you don't have the reserves to get out of it,
Right.
to correct. And that's mostly where other people's support comes in.
That's right.
You're just looking to
All right, but this because it ends up in this situation where then we're depending on community and larger groups to help us recover
That's
to
right.
a certain extent. And there's always going to be a limited amount of resources available for that purpose.
Right.
And
now, okay, go ahead.
The issue is then then it matters what tribe you're in, what family you're in.
Correct.
And that's another accident. And it's just a different card on the tarot field.
Right.
And it's like you end up what civilization you're in, and the larger circumstances as bigger envelopes are getting involved.
Right.
And it's accidental, but it's still deterministic.
Correct. So let's flip it around. Let's talk about the addicts who really do want to die.
Oh my.
Right. So there are people who are broken. In other words, we don't know why they're broken. They could be broken because the pachinko tree just happened to get the right combination to cause enough trauma.
Snake eyes.
Right. So we don't know, right? But what we do find out is that a lot of people retreat into therapies, right? Self-medication, whatever, or behavioral therapies to overcome this. And then they don't reform until they hit a point where they realize they're going to die if they don't change. And those people reform. If you give them love, right? I mean, that's what, that's why the whole Jesus love and 12. So I'm like, we're not taking away Jesus because it's Jesus and 12 steps seem to work to some degree, right? So, because it's just love, right? I mean, that's how you get over it. So, but for some people, they actually do want to die. It's like, what is that movie, Leaving Las Vegas?
I don't know that one.
Nicolas Cage character, and goes to Las Vegas to drink himself to death.
Oh my. Yeah, so this goes to this Norwegian rat experiment from the 50s. I'm certain B.F. Skinner was somehow involved, okay? And it's like this, because they tortured rats. They were just rough people. But it's like the rat experiment is this: you throw the Norwegian rat, wild brown rat, you throw him into a tub of water, and he'll struggle for 20 minutes and drown.
Yeah.
But if at 19 and a half minutes you pick him out and dry him off and pet him down and warm him up and throw him back in, then he'll swim around for hours.
Hours, yes, exactly.
Because he has hope that he's going to get rescued. And it's like, that's the difference. And it's like, so it is like, the issue is like this: can you see yourself in the future? Right? Can you see a future for yourself? And at some point, people, the ones that cannot see a future for themselves are going to extinction.
Yeah.
That's how it looks to me, and it's just it's deterministic. It's like, how can it be, right?
Right. It's to some degree, it's the female instinct, feminine instinct to care, ends up being enabling. So the whole San Francisco, LA model of degenerative cities is actually enabling. It isn't caretaking.
Right. So I just saw Portland is going to make it so the people that are encamped on the street can sue somebody for harassing them. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't bode well for your city.
I'm not really sure why. I mean, of course, we've put in there is that any politician, any official, right, who tolerates decline of capital, the commons, is prosecutable for the defense because he's failing his duty to insure.
Right.
All right, and so we end that ability to do what they're doing there. So because enabling is failure of duty to insure, because you're basically creating by enablement is abating into hazard. So abating into hazard is a crime.
Yeah.
So at any event, so what I'm getting from you is that I can't remember. You and I have been working together long enough that I can't remember what you used to think like. You know what I mean? I can't remember anymore. So but I know that you would tease me a little bit about how I.
No, you would say it's disturbing and it will make me laugh.
Yes.
Now it doesn't make me laugh anymore.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, I get it. And it's just Pachenko balls, and it's like, okay, just deterministic.
So the difference. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, the effect it had on me is, and I realize of our team, I tend to be the most forgiving. I mean, I understand that I'm already a sinner amongst the people less sinful than I, because I am forgiving. But what it ended up doing for me is I'm like, oh, they're not actually evil. They just don't know any better. Right? Then you say, wait. They're not all evil, right? They just don't know any better. There are some that are in fact evil, but by the most part, people are. Yeah,
it's interesting. Is like just based on our linguistic metrics, that I think it's very rare that there's evil ones.
Yes.
So it's like, but there are evil ones, and it's mostly they're self-serving and they are willful in their ignorance and profiting from it.
right.
So they don't qualify as evil. They come off as unethical or immoral.
Right. I mean, this is the problem we have with the right and left is a right person like me can look at the left and say, you're just flawed. But the left doesn't do that. They say we're evil.
Which is interesting because they're kind of atheistic in their claims.
Well, no, they're just, they live in an emotional world. Right. So they see the world through their emotions. We live in a rational world. And see, we look at emotions rationally. We question them is probably a better way to put it. And so they attribute to us, they project upon us motivations we don't have.
Right.
And that's because they're looking at how people feel about what's being said. And we're looking at what the outcome of people's behavior was. And that's why conservatives use hyperbola, right? That's what conservative means, is the intertemporal, systemic intertemporal judgment of questions. It's rather than the temporal experience of questions, which means we're just more mature, right? We're also way less crazy, which is really interesting. So, in any event, where were we heading with that? Oh, is whether evil or not. So this goes back to the question of tort versus crime, right? And so, you can commit a tort even though it's not a crime, right? Right. In other words, a tort is something that you've imposed a cost on others, largely by a failure of due diligence that you were just aware of, or you misjudged or whatever, but it wasn't you weren't attempting to gain by it, right? There was no, I mean, generally, right? If you're trying to screw somebody over, they'll figure that out. But in general, I'm going to classify tort as, well, you've just imposed a cost on somebody, right? That's not criminal, right? That's just restitution is necessary. If you did it on purpose, there's restitution and punishment, right? And modify that behavior. Well, it's the same thing here. Is that, are you evil because you intend to be, or because you think you're right? But you think you're right, have you failed due diligence? So people don't have to be evil to do evil, which is what we're saying, right? I'm watching your eyes.
Right.
I'm not sure I'm getting my point across.
No, I get it.
Right. So you don't have to mean to lie to tell a lie. You just fail due diligence against lying. You don't need to intend to do harm to do harm. You have to fail due diligence. You don't need to intend to do evil. You just need to fail to do due diligence. Now, the problem is, it takes more knowledge to do due diligence than it is to do whatever the thing is you're doing.
That's right. Behavioral economics being what they are.
So this is this reason we focus on falsification, is because falsification is essentially the act of due diligence. In other words, I got to think of not about what I want to do, but everything around what I want to do. Now, which one of those, that takes a lot more knowledge. So that's why we moved from justification to falsification, because you justify moral action. In other words, you avoid blame, right? But due diligence requires falsification.
So justification is a lower standard.
Right. It's imitation justification, reason falsification. So it's a higher standard, and it's rational why civilizations would develop rules of what to do for everybody who is relatively equal, right? When the not only the individual in the group, but the whole group lacks knowledge. Pretty hard to teach a kid falsification. I've tried. You could do it. I mean, my son did it at like 3 or 4, right? He's not average, but I mean, his son could do it. No, that doesn't make sense. And I taught you, this is one of the things people don't realize about English culture, is trickstering, is teaching you falsification. And so I would tell my son, I always tell the story of, I tell my son how he's, I don't know, 2.5 or 3, whatever he is, he can talk. So maybe he's 4. And he's asking me how the alarm system works in the cabin with my log house, right?
Right. Cabin.
Call it cabin, fucking monumental castle of log. All right. So that's just what we called it. We call the house and the cabin. That's just what happened, right? So so I'm taking him around, and it's a fucking elaborate alarm system with everything. And I'm explaining it to him, and then I ask him to recite it back to me. He tells me how it works, etc. And then I pick a thing and I make some nonsense up that's utterly ridiculous. And I watch his face, and it's like,
He's
no,
processing
that's
it.
not true. That's not, no, that he wouldn't say true. No, Dad, that's not right. And I would start laughing. But that's how you teach falsification. And that's why falsification is probably more intrinsic to the English mind, is because the legalistic culture, falsificationary culture, and trickstering is a means of teaching falsification. So because it forces you to think of all the alternatives.
Right.
And so it's a can be, can't be, true, false, right, wrong question, whether good or evil problem. And so what justification tends to be is a good or evil question for people with less knowledge and less understanding of the world. So it's a normal logical sequence. It's just like embodiment, right, to projection, to anthropomorphism, to religion, to philosophy, to empiricism, to science, to computation. There's an arc. And it's logical that to do computation, you need to know what we know, which is you need to have the first principles to do computation. Otherwise you can't, right?
Man.
No, we don't think of what we do, right? When we do constructive logic from first principles, we're falsifying alternatives, right? We're not proving. We call it a proof, but we're saying you can get there this way. But what we're really doing is saying you can't get there the other way, right? There's no way to get there, so that can't be true.
It goes to a dead end. It's like there's no base of what you're saying,
right? You
unless
can't.
you're
It's
hitting
not
these
evolutionarily constructible, right? It's like vision evolved a couple of times, right? So blood evolved a couple of times, right? I mean, so excuse me, I don't know what problem is this morning. But and so, like a lot of things we talk about, the audience doesn't know how deep we go.
That's right. It's
They
unspoken.
It's unspoken. So we can talk about something like being human bots, and we can break it into the civilizational components that cause it. We can break it into the sex differences, the class differences, the generational differences that brought your botness to be about. And on the other side, we'll take, here's your intelligence personality traits, and we'll say, okay, that's why these things match up, right? We'll put that up. So we can do that for everything. I mean, there's nothing we can't do it for. I mean, that's our problem, right? Is we're trying to winnow it down. There's something.
It's only everything.
It's only everything. We got to turn it, And then there's it's like we don't have to go into chemistry. And then you get to the problem of, well, if we got into protein folding, I mean, I listened to somebody talk about the math on that the other day, and I was like, well, there's way more in this one protein. It can fold more potential combinations than there are molecules in the universe.
Right. What and it's amazing is the body generates the protein and then folds it up in a predictable manner to get the same result. And every time it does it. Like,
and
wow,
we do actually know why. I mean, we know that it has something to do with charge.
Yes.
But how that charge spreads along that fucking huge complex
Wait, and then it
so
folds and it
fast.
changes the relative charges so that it folds to a,
Yeah. I
keeps
mean,
wrapping around until it satisfies the charges.
what's the, when
Yeah.
thing that's the carrier on the DNA, it looks like it's walking.
Yes.
I can't remember what the, I don't,
It's one of those little things.
it's just like, or just the opening and closing of, like, I know neurology better. So how your neuron releases a charge, or how the Bhutan releases chemistry across the synapse. I mean, that's all electrical charge changes, right? By different things carrying different charges is fascinating, right?
Yeah.
But we don't, most of what that's different from, in other words, you and I aren't trying to solve that particular problem. We just know that it's charged. We're trying to solve the things that are human scale because we act at human scale, right? And that's all we're capable of doing. So the difference, of course, we run into is that people don't want the truth about behavior like they want the truth about.
No, I think that it would be better
world.
said. They will prefer the not truth.
They would prefer the not truth, right?
And they demonstrate their preference.
Yes, all the time. So.
Which is an interesting thing, because it's like to cause someone to believe something they would prefer not to be true. It's work.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's hard. The dualism thing is hard for a lot of people. Like, I'm perfectly happy believing in God, and I'm perfectly happy believing women are wonderful. Right? I'm perfectly happy with those two things. Right? Now, if you ask me to argue it, I'll argue the opposite.
To make a case?
Because I'm like, I can't testify to it.
Right.
Right. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to act in accordance with what I prefer.
Right.
But I don't lie to myself about it. I can't testify to either of those things. One, because it's not possible to know. And the other one, because it's contrary.
It's not true.
I know it's not true. But I'm not going to behave differently because of it. It's like knowing people are vastly unequal. I'm not going to act like that's true.
That's right.
I'm going to treat everybody as, a peer, which is the autist's bias in the first place. But I'm going to treat everybody as a peer until they make it impossible, right? But why? Because those beliefs, I prefer to call them preferences, because they're a belief until you don't know, right? But once you know, now it's a preference. So I prefer to believe women are virtuous angels on pedestals, whatever, because I think they're yummy, right? And women are yummy. They're really yummy, It's just, most of them are anyway. And then I'm not going to go sideways. I was going to go sideways.
No.
Almost to the, and I prefer to. I talk to God every day. I prefer to talk to God. It works for me, right? But I wouldn't go and defend my preference as a truth. Does that make sense? In other words, there's a difference,
right? So this is what offends you about the fundamentalists, because say this is the truth
instead of a preference. And I'm like, you can't testify to it. You don't claim it's true. You just say, I prefer to believe this, right? And because it makes me a happier person, it's better and more successful in the world, right? It's like, I could pretend there's a hole in the middle of my living room floor over there, right?
Okay.
I could pretend it, and I could walk around that hole every day and pretend that hole is there, right? There's that hole there, but maybe I just prefer to pretend there's a hole there. I mean, what does that really matter to anyone? Well, so that's what bothers me about fundamentalists is two things. First, it's like, if you prefer to believe in God or Jesus, whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't want to pick on Christians.
Right.
I do enough of that. I do enough picking on Christians and Muslims and Jews and everybody else, right? So, but if you prefer to hold this belief, that's fine. But you can't argue that it's true outside of the context. right? So if we're talking about something that's in the material world, I think we have the right answer. Deliver unto deliver unto Caesar, which is reality, and deliver unto God what's his, and that's spiritual. And it's also so and when you're spiritual, you can say, okay, I'm going to treat you according to my spiritual references,
Right.
right? But don't
Right. What Brandon would talk about this as alignment, right? Which is metaphysical. We're heading in that, we're trending in the same direction
yes,
in a coherent fashion.
yes. That's thankfully the AI business is making alignment a common understanding. And what I like about alignment is versus good and evil. It's aligned or unaligned. In other words,
So
it's
deviant or aligned.
right. I like that version versus good or evil. Because
Yeah, it's less stark.
well, it's less, well, first of all, it just admits that we don't know. There's plenty of alignment things. I mean, I'm not going to tell a fat person they're fat. Hi,
True.
of course, I can look at the mirror right now because I'm 30 pounds overweight and say, you fat fuck, right? I mean, I can do that to myself, whatever. But, I mean, I'm not going to go to an obese person and pick on them, right?
No.
Uh, I don't want to make people feel bad, right? That's just not helpful to anyone. Certainly not happen to pro-social behavior. But I mean, that's different from lying about it, that it's a good, or that they're attractive, or that it's healthy.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Those are different things. So there's a difference between protocol and testimony. Protocol is, it'd be one thing if people would say, if the woke community was saying observe protocol, right, which is don't do no harm, instead of social construction of falsehoods.
Right. Which is interesting. That's interesting because they're making claims that it's truth,
But it's not.
which is I was watching a guy, fellow was on a television show and he was talking about you can't change a male to a female, okay? And then the oppositional party that he was Piers Morgan's show, that he had a lady there and she's taken the opposite position, that it's a legal construction and legally she can change to a man. I'm like, wow, you're a nut.
You're a nut. Well, I mean, what they live in the world of emotions, though, right? Not in decidability. They live in that world. So they place a higher preference on the experience, and we place it on decidability. So, I mean, if that's true, let's just abolish all sex differences in all sports, and then men will just run everything. There won't be any women's sports, right? Which would deprive me because my version of I mean, I'm trying to think of my version of looking at hot girls or whatever is female is women's track and field sports, because I love athletic women. I mean, I just think it's fucking art in motion.
Right.
Or ballet. There's a channel that that's for young ballerinas as they're working their way up, and they just do these moves. And it's like every fucking one is like, I just want that. Can I just have this? I want a screen, right? I don't want to watch the whole ballet, right? I just want to, because sometimes it's boring. I used to have season tickets. It's not that I'm ignorant of the thing, but I mean, just the human figure, right? The female figure or the male figure for that matter. It's just fucking beautiful. My art background coming out maybe, but I just think it's amazing, right? And that's what beautiful is. So uh, I don't understand, I just don't understand the current, what I do understand it, the current mass industrialization of peasant bodies, is that what it is? Peasant form? It's a there's a anti-beauty movement in fashion, right? It's an anti-beauty movement in fashion, just like
It is absurd. It's like out of a science fiction movie. It's absurdity.
well, they're trying to make it possible for
The theory that we're working on here is that we have the misfortune of living through Arnold Schwarzenegger's science fiction movies from the 80s.
horrible.
And it's like, because they're coming to fruition. It's like, you must be kidding.
It was a warning, not a prescription.
So here we are. But it is there was they're talking about RFK being censored by the news after he announced his candidacy, because he says things about the big pharma that are not tolerable. And it's like, the issue being this is it's predictable. It's like it's like promoted dysfunction because it's for profit.
Yes.
Because it's a predictable trade. Because they're just playing the pachinko machine and getting paid at payouts.
Did I lose you?
Do you hear me?
I thought I lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So it's like these social trends that are being promoted by financial interests because they can profit from the predictable behavior of the masses.
Yes. And it's this is what I mean, is that this is Western civilization's problem. Is that our overexpansion and everything always leads to our failure. And what's happened in the past is because we have many small states. You know, France can fail and Germany can pick up, and Germany can fail and England can pick up. England, you know, England.
Right. We have alternative pathways are being explored.
New cores, right? So what happens, of course, is the most decadent fails, and the next and a lesser decadence picks up. So Italy fails, goes to France. France fails, go to Germania. Germania doesn't fail so much as gets surpassed. And we go to the Atlantics again, which is England and the Dutch. They fail and go to America. America fails, and the problem is, where do we go now? Do we go to Eastern Europe? Possibly. So where does the center form when so the virtue of Western civilization is because we're not centralized. It's possible. Somewhat happened in China too, but it's possible for a less decadent place to come. But why do we become decadent? Because we're generally really good at producing a middle class. And middle class will do whatever it can to keep expanding its income. And then the people below that will do the same until you run into the Peter principle, which is that which is where we are now, which is the population has risen by economic means to the point where almost everyone is operating at their point of incompetence. And that's what's happened here. I mean, which you can probably see. I mean, I shared my favorite paper in years today, which was shared by Dawkins.
Yes.
Which was the woke destruction of science, and truth, and research and its consequences. And it's pretty well, it's got a lot of signatories on it, and it's pretty well researched, but. So I have something to point people to now.
It's nice. That was a good article. I haven't finished reading it, but I began it.
Yes, I'm trying to think about it. There's supposed to be something I can tease you about
No,
regarding this, but I'm not coming out to, I'm not coming.
you're gonna make my bot feel bad, are you?
Uh,
So I try to
It's very hard to make you feel bad. Uh, all right, have we played that through?
I think that was good. I think we should just make this the cut.
Yes.
And then just so I'm gonna tell the people to hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell and leave the glorious comments.
Brad and I are going to go on to work on the sciences, first principles. All right, thank you, Dr. Brad. Everybody, thanks for watching.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.